do it together. We'll research it, right?
Yeah.
At that time, in the desert, in Arabia, right? Were there people that knew about when fresh water and sweet water?
At that time already, the Roman Catholic was already like, raised all over the place for years, and they had a bunch of they pretty much dominated the whole Western world. And
right. I mean,
I'm pretty sure there was a lot of intelligent people that knew.
Sure. But this is not about astronomy. This is about the depth of the ocean, right?
Right.
And at that time,
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know if there was.
Well, let's look it up.
Right.
Let's research it.
Right.
But that's one thing, right? How does a child develop? How are the stages of development? They didn't know back then, right? So there's a scientist.
I don't know.
Well, but look it up, right? There's a scientist. His name is Dr. Mures Bukai. All right, Google him, right? He's a French scientist, atheist. Started out to prove religion wrong. He took the Bible, looked at facts in the Bible, he proved them to be inconsistent with modern science. Standing ovation, everybody, woohoo, great, he's against religion, atheist guy, right? He said, I'm on a roll, let me do this with the Qur'an. He took the Qur'an, Mures Bukai, you're going to Google him, right? He's got a book called The Bible, the Qur'an, and Science. So he goes out as an atheist to disprove religion, and when he goes out, he studies the Qur'an, and he writes that there is no way from the scientific facts that were known anywhere in the world during the time of the Prophet Muhammad that he could have known this, peace be upon all the prophets, right? So he, as a scientist, did the exact same thing you want to do. He researched that time period, and he said the scientific facts in the Qur'an could not have been known to even scientists of that time, let alone a man who couldn't read. The Prophet Muhammad, he couldn't read. You get him a book, he was unlettered, illiterate, right? So now you think about that, right? Like, how would that happen? And it's not just one thing. There's linguistic miracles, there is scientific miracles, there are prophecies, there is history and future that was not known by the Arabs, right? So when you put all that together, you realize that there is a miraculous prophethood here, right? This is the final link of prophets, right? And this was predicted by Jesus and Moses and those before him, that comforter would come, right? So when you see that,
comforter, you see it as like
as the Prophet Muhammad, right? Because look, it would be the likeness of Moses, right? So when you think about how that comes, right? Somebody who had parents who was kicked out of his own people, like Moses, he had to leave the Pharaoh, right? So you look at those signs that come.
If he's a comforter, he should be linked up and correlate with what Jesus said. Right?
Sure.
Otherwise, they can't be contradicting each other.
Sure. So we believe the message of Jesus and the message of Muhammad, peace be on both of them.
So let me ask you something then. So if you do believe that, because I heard of that, right?
Cool.
So that means that everything that Jesus taught,
right,
should be embraced by Muslims.
Of course.
I like 100%.
100%. But what he actually taught.
The problem, So the problem is that.
So
when you get some script, because I know that scriptures are being altered.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's the issue.
But let's go back in this.
Sure.
What do you mean by altered, right?
Right.
Language has changed, right? As we know,
Sure.
the New Testament, as Christians say, like
Sure.
it was written in Aramaic and Greek.
Exactly.
Greek, right? Because that was the language, right?
Aramaic, actually, because Greek wasn't the. No. Because the language of the people of Israel that Jesus was around was not Greek.
Right.
It was Aramaic.
Right.
Koine Greek came after St. Paul, right? Which is about 100 years after Jesus' time, right? Because the language of knowledge at the time in the European side was Greek. So when that message went, it was translated into Koine Greek.
It's funny because they will speak actually mainly in Aramaic, but things that to be written on, it was mainly in
No,
Greek.
not in Israel. What is today Israel, like what Jerusalem is, right? Quds. The language of writing and language of the Jews over there was Aramaic.
No, right.
Even for their knowledge.
I'm talking about Jews. I'm talking about believers that were non-Jews afterwards.
Right, but that was about 100 years afterwards when it went into Koine Greek.
A couple years after.
No. Google it. No. But I'm saying is St. Paul was how long after?
Well, Paul was like a couple years after. I mean, not 100 years after.
About 70 to 100 years.
Yeah,
Google it.
Maybe 76, but not like hundreds. Like,
it was about. And that thing, after St. Paul, things went into Koine Greek. Right. So that was at minimum 70 years.
Because a lot of the people that were being incorporated to the belief were non-Jews.
Exactly.
That's why. So
but that's it. So that means you have this big time period where there was no Koine Greek, it was an Aramaic.
Right.
When it went into Koine Greek, the original scriptures were lost, right? We don't have any of the actual writings.
To be honest, I will consider scriptures
right.
this.
Right.
The Torah,
right.
the Tanakh.
Sure.
That's it.
Right.
The other stuff,
John, Matthew.
These are just testimonies of people, believers.
I like
and
it.
the prophet.
I like it. I'm
and the
with
book
you
was
on
put
this.
together in the
Excellent,
Bible.
excellent,
So here's
excellent.
the thing. I think there's a lot of misconception in that. So when you read here in the New Testament,
John,
whenever it talks
Mark,
about
Luke.
like scripture stuff like that, it's talk about this, the Torah and the Tanakh.
Excellent.
Right. So let's just get that clear because
I'm with it. I'm with it. No,
So,
I agree with you.
But these are the testimonies of people
Right.
that walk with the prophet.
But that's the thing. If you Google, if you look up
Right.
research
Right.
on who wrote Matthew, Mark, John,
Some we don't have the authors.
we don't have the
Yeah,
author.
yeah. That doesn't- well,
You're a
he-
well-read
but
man
here's the thing,
already,
though. That
right?
doesn't
You're
mean it's
there.
not- But that doesn't mean it's not true because
But let me ask you this, right? How do you depend on something you don't even know the author of?
Because if Jesus was chosen to
Right.
bring the message forward,
Right.
it can't be altered whether man try
Oh,
to
but
do
but
it.
that's the issue, right?
Right.
If you look at the message today, there's definitely where's King James and others who came.
Totally, yeah.
So it was altered.
So okay, so
All right.
when we alter, I'm gonna tell you this. Though.
All right, go ahead.
Remember, King James was the Anglo-Saxon English, right?
Yep.
Right. So it was in 1610.
Sure.
When it started. It was the first King James that was
All right.
translated.
First English version of the
they
Bible.
They put a bunch of words right there. For example, the Anglo-Saxon word, when they refer to the underworld, they will use the word hellion, which
Right.
is hell.
Hell, right.
The real word that was Jesus was able to speak about was Gehenna.
Right.
The valley of Hinnom.
Right.
It was a valley outside Jerusalem that was a burning
Interesting,
place,
right?
you know?
Right.
And I know, I think in Arabic it's Gehenna or something. How you guys call it? Hell.
Jannah.
Yeah.
Jannah, Jahannam. Jannah is,
So God means valley. Hinnom means Hinnom. It was a valley where they used to sacrifice kids and do all this stuff.
Gotcha.
So they changed it. They just put hell. Why? Because they wanted to scare people.
Okay.
So this place was actually, the belief of hell is actually a pagan thing. It's a
Wow.
pagan root.
Interesting.
So the whole thing of like firing, torture.
Yeah.
There's demons right there.
Yeah.
That is all made with pagan. The Greeks believe in that, dude. They had a
That's
worship
interesting.
called Sol Divinitas. Oh, check it out, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
This is
man.
cool stuff. Yeah.
So,
Let's
so
look
once
at
I found
it.
out about that, I was like, oh shoot, okay. So I started finding out like errors in the Bible, right?
Right.
But
I'm
it
with
wasn't
you.
so much that it was a message; it was certain words that were like mistranslated, right?
Excellent. But that's my point, right?
Right.
When you have those errors, right? For me, as a person who wants to try to follow the truth 100%,
Right.
that now I can't trust that
Well,
100%.
You know what I did?
What?
So I had King James, right? And I'm
Okay.
like, oh shoot.
Cool,
Let's
cool.
see where the authors and theologians from King James,
Right.
where the source from.
Right.
And I started looking at the Greek, man.
Nice.
At the middle.
Right.
Start finding out, man. So there's a bunch of people, bro.
Right.
Maybe they're not the popular, but a bunch of people who are Christians, who are Jesus followers, who
Right.
actually see Jesus as the prophet, not as the third person God, bro.
I'm with
You
you
know what I'm
on this, bro. Look at that.